All right, we'll start. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so happy to see all of you, and hopefully we're going to take a really interesting journey back into the past through an amazing lens of both photography and journalism. Welcome to the second panel of We Are But Your Children, which will be a forthcoming book on the Nightclub ManRay, which will talk about Man Ray's 20-year history from 1985 to 2005 and explore not only Man Ray, but the Boston, Cambridge nightlife and all of its glory. This is a special panel that we're having. We're going to be doing more panels as the year goes along, sort of going through a timeline of Man Ray, but in between, we're going to have different special panels dealing with issues of journalism and bartending and DJs. And I wanted to make this one first because we have such a great dynamic panel of people involved. And what I want to do is introduce each of them now. So I want to introduce first Emily Sweeney. Emily is a journalist at the Boston Globe and author of the books Boston Organized Crime and Gangland Boston. Emily is a contributor to the We Are But Your Children book, and we look forward to showcasing her unique vision of Boston nightlife and her time at Man Ray. Derek Kuyumijian is a photographer working in the Metro Boston area for the several past decades, documenting everything from sewer rats to Tanglewood, which is a wide range of subjects. Derek is using his photographic skills on other projects coming up, including the Granary Burial Ground, looking at graves in the burial ground, and also researching and shooting old theaters in the Boston area. I'm having to read this from my phone, and there we go. And our third and final panelist, Charla Clark, is a New Hampshire native. Charla has worked in Boston media since 2000, and she kicked off her career by having the most fun anyone could possibly have in journalism as a staffer at Dig Boston, then known as the Weekly Dig. She followed that up with a 5-year stint at the dearly departed, rest in peace, Boston Phoenix, which she misses as much as she does Man Ray. After that, she went to work for Boston Magazine. Currently, she's the managing editor of Christopher Kimball's Milk Street, a cooking magazine where the gothiest thing she's apt to write about is devil's food cake. And just saying devil's food cake makes me hungry, so thank you. So what I'd like to do is just give everyone some information before we start. We ask that you remain muted throughout the panel. There will be an opportunity to have interaction with our panelists at the end. We have a chat room, which you can pose questions if you want to give to our panelists. Our co-hosts, my co-authors and editors Sam Levitt and Ted Rossicott will address your questions, and we will try and answer as many of them as humanly possible towards the end of the session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop speaking and let our panelists talk because they have much more interesting things to say than I do. So I want to pose a question to all of you, and this question seems like a larger question, but it's probably the most personal question I'm going to ask all of you, which is, I want you to tell me what led you on the path to your craft. How is it that you came to do what you do? And we can start with Emily.
Okay, yeah, that's a big, tough question to answer. Growing up, I was always into media. I never really even thought about it that much, but when I was like even a little kid, I used to like make up like having like my own radio station, recording cassettes on a boombox and like recording the different songs. And I would start like little like comic books and magazines and draw a lot. And so in college, I went to Northeastern University to play hockey. and I was majoring in kind of a pre-med pharmacy program at the time. Hockey started interfering with my labs. And so I was like, oh, I need to switch majors because I clearly need to focus on hockey. So I just picked journalism, and because I figured, hey, I can write about anything, and it was the best choice I've ever made. I've had a great time working at the Boston Globe, and yeah, it was. That's how it came to be.
Excellent. Derek, how about yourself?
Well, let's see. I took it was my first year of college. I took photography and I fell in love with it. I remembered winning an award for photographing on the Boston Marathon Day, these people running around Cleveland Circle, and it was a great image, and it was a very unexpected moment in my life, and I just simply fell into it and stuck with it all those years and worked my way around, did some work with Lollipop magazine, and then I started doing nightclub photography for the Improper Bostonian, which was very interesting, and that led me into photographing at ManRay. But I've photographed around town for a number of the publications throughout the years and got to meet a lot of interesting people and got to be a part of a lot of interesting and fascinating projects, and I'm very proud of the work I've done.
Excellent. Thank you. Charla.
Journalism was actually sort of modeled for me in my life. My aunt was an editor at the Nashua Telegraph for a very long time. And so that was sort of in the background. And originally my plan was to become a science writer. And it was funny in college, I discovered how I would get A's on papers in high school, but I discovered I was kind of a terrible journalist. And, I had to spend many years like interning at, I fell into places like the Weekly Dig and, learned a lot on the job, and which I thought, I think that's really important. So yeah, that's sort of a plan, but my career path was kind of haphazard at the same time.
I think that goes to a lot of us, sort of like falling into our jobs, so to speak, rather than feeling like we're laser focused. This is what I want to do, and the next thing you know, like I'm doing this. This next question is a bit of a setup question, but I want to ask each of you. Taking Man Ray, I know this is a book about Man Ray and largely talking about Man Ray, but I want to put that aside for 1 second and ask each of you. Talk to me about your beginnings, your first steps into Boston, Cambridge nightlife. What was your experience? Where did you go? Whether it was shows or nightclubs? Talk to me a little bit about stepping those first, baby steps into Boston nightlife. Emily.
Yeah, so I guess I took my first baby steps right into Man Ray. It was like pretty much the first like nightclub in Cambridge I ever went to. They used to have I believe an 18+ goth night on Wednesdays. So that's where I went first. And I remember first going to Man Ray and just thinking like, wow, this is an amazing space. Having like 2 different rooms, even though sometimes Wednesday nights it was like kind of closed down to one area. And I just remember thinking, this is great. And I came back again and again. And then obviously when I turned 21, I started going to all, the different nights there. But yeah, it was Man Ray's where I got my first taste of Boston, Cambridge nightlife.
That's a great beginning. Derek.
Well, I'd say it first started, I used to hang out a lot around Harvard Square in the Pit. I was a pit rat, back in the day. And the first show I went to, first time in the club, was at the Rat. I remember Psycho was the headlining band. It was all ages. I was like 16 years old. I was all excited about it. And, I knew like a lot of great bands played at the Rat, and I'm here hanging out with all these crazy kids and having a good time. But Man Ray would have came into my life pretty quickly, I think. A lot of people that I hung out with went to Man Ray a lot, so I ended up going in with them. And this would have been in the mid 80s or so, where things were a little bit more loosey-goosey as far as gang in being underage. And a lot of the people knew me as, I didn't really drink or do anything, wild and crazy, so they let me in. And I remember the first time going into Man Ray and just being utterly wowed by the scene. You had so much going on in there, and a lot of different people being together and being themselves and having a good time doing it. And I really just fell in love with the place. And
Excellent.
that was my
Awesome.
beginning there.
Thank you. Charla.
My beginning with Boston nightlife was about as clueless as it is possible to be. Like, I was a freshman at Boston University. I had, I'd grown up in the area and I knew Boston a little bit, but clearly not enough. Where I was trying to go my first week at Boston University, I pulled out, I think it was a Phoenix, and I was looking through all the listings and I saw that the was playing on Lansdowne Street, and I'm in Kenmore Square. My dorm is, it's Shelton Hall in Kenmore Square, and I needed a map and a policeman to direct me to Lansdowne Street. But the way that I found my way into the goth scene is actually somebody who's, I believe, attending this event right now. It was happened. I was an aspiring goth at the time, but didn't really know anything about it. And he ran into me at a comic book shop, Comicopia in Kenmore Square, and we got to talking, and he directed me to Ceremony, another goth event, and that ended up, helping me, make a lot of friends in the scene, and eventually propelling me to Man Ray as well, which was quite a wonderland for goths at the time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sort of keeping on the thread of this and getting each of your own personal sort of viewpoints on this. So I wonder if you could tell me what you found either colorful or static or dynamic in regards to Boston Cambridge nightlife, like sort of putting yourself in sort of a I'm going to look at this and offer my own commentary type of look. What is it that you found sort of unique or, like, as I said, dynamic in regards to Boston Cambridge nightlife? Emily.
I mean, obviously, when I think of like Cambridge nightlife, I think of the Middle East. I mostly think of Man Ray. And so, at Man Ray, I think they did an amazing job of keeping like a variety of themes, not only for every night and just having the different nights, you know what I mean? Having a goth night, having a gay night, having like, kind of like BNDS&M night. So it was just like, a lot of people would be like, wow, you going to Man Ray again? Like, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like every time it's totally different.
Yep.
And not to mention like all the crazy stuff people wore. Like, oh my God, like some of the craziest things I've ever seen people wore, like, was at Man Ray. So every time was an adventure.
I like that. Derek.
Well, for me, like the Boston nightlife scene, it was very unique in that you had the college kids, you had the sort of townies, you had all these different people that just kind of mixed together at night. And it really, I think, led to a very unique scene where you had, again, like different avenues of life converging at one point. And Man Ray was definitely, I would say, the most extreme example of that. You had different communities coming in and mingling and having a great time, which was something very unique. I've gone around and seen different clubs, and nothing ever like Man Ray, actually, to be honest with you. And I think that's something, again, I always loved about Boston and Cambridge nightlife, is that you had a lot of things being represented, and you got to see a lot of different people at various clubs and various shows and various gatherings. A lot of circles converged in Boston. A lot of circles converged.
Excellent. Charla?
I mean, my thought was basically very similar to Derek's, where I think Boston was, and I think still is, it's this interesting, it has an interesting texture to it. And these ManRay, I think especially, but lots of places in the nightlife scene would bring together these really disparate people. Like, I feel like in a given goth night, I could talk to, like a millionaire hacker, or a guy who fixes pipe organs, or a ballerina who cosplays as Professor Snape, and a plumber. Like, it really brought together a wide socioeconomic strata, and people who are smart and interesting people, and I was always struck by that.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, especially at Man Ray, but I would say in other venues as well. Boston's such an interesting sort of mishmash of academics and crazies and goths, and I have friends that live in Austin, and they say, oh, Austin's the most eclectic city, and I'm like, yeah, you've probably never lived in Boston or gone to Cambridge. Like, I feel like we could stake a claim on that. I really do. So all right, I want to sort of dive into the oceans of journalism and photojournalism. And so my initial question for all of you in regards to this is, and it's sort of a large question, you can segment it however you want. Can you describe to me some of the benefits and also some of the challenges of being a journalist or photojournalist in the Boston, Cambridge area? What is it that presents itself as both workable and challenging? Emily?
I don't even know how to answer that. I think it's challenging to be a journalist anywhere. And obviously, I feel like I have it really easy in Boston because, I was born and raised here. So I have like a lot of knowledge, you know what I mean? Like just from like living here. So yeah, I haven't had a problem.
No, that's fine. And I guess what I'm trying to gather, if this helps any, is you can put a personal bent on it. Like, what have you found as like fairly accessible in regards to items to report on, and things that might be a little bit harder, and whether it's dealing with organizations or people, like just sort of like what's been the path of honing your craft in this area?
Well, again, like, I feel like the longer that you're, working on a beat or an area, the more people you meet, the more sources you develop. And so, it just becomes, easier to find stories and break stories, the more folks and the more familiar they are with you, they'll trust you to, give you sensitive information. So I mean, in a way that's worked in my favor, since I've been at the Globe for so long, and, getting to cover Boston for so long.
Excellent, thank you. Derek?
Mhm. Well, for me, with Emily, growing up in the city, I know a lot of people. So, in Boston is a very small town in that regard. As I said earlier, law circles converge. And if I needed someone to model, or if I needed to find something, if I didn't know where it was, I would know someone that would. Or if I needed a model, hi, would you mind posing for this? So, oh yeah, I'd love to, and they would be there. And, again, it was very easy for me to navigate around the city, as I've lived here my whole life. See, the challenges, I can't really think of anything other than I've always wanted to try to present everyone in the best light possible. When it came to, unless of course it was something journalistic, and sometimes I've been overwhelmed by tragedy or something that was documenting, but always kind of hit me personally, I suppose. But I'd say that would be the one sort of detriment of covering things in the city goes. When the bombing happened, it really saddened me to see such fear and craziness afoot. A lot of the vigils. There was one that I covered where the police started to kind of clamp down on everyone, and that was very frightening. Or when it resulted in the rioting and looting, that really saddened me to see the city I love in so much pain. I would say that would be the one detriment. I would say being a journalist in the city.
It's you bring up a really good point, Derek, and I'm thinking back to 2004 when I lived in Cambridge, and my roommate was going out to take photographs of the Red Sox when they won the the Red Sox won the World Series, and I begged him, I'm like, just, put some extra padding on. It's really important. He's like, no, I'm just taking pictures. No one's going to harm me. And then he came home and he had a slice through his sweatshirt. And I'm like you got to be careful, because if you're going out into a crowd, you're taking pictures, like there is a little, and things get out of hand, or there is the possibility of harm. And, it's one of the things I always remember and always try and keep understanding is that, journalism and photojournalism, can be a very rough job depending on where you're going and what you're doing. So you'll always have my deepest respect for that. So Charla.
Well, I mean, I guess one of the nice things about Boston journalism is that so many interesting people, even if they don't stay always, there's a lot of interesting people who pass through, and we have, there's no shortage of interesting stuff to write about. It's been a real, I've never had, I've been fortunate to be able to weasel my way into beats that suit me, and, topics that I want to write about. But yeah, it's not hard to find stories here. And I think a good journalist can find stories anywhere, but Boston does provide. I think one of the struggles is, I mean, this is the obvious one, and as Emily said, just the erosion of the local journalism scene in general. It's very, there are so few publications now, and it's really hard to get a foothold, and it's hard to start, and it's hard. There's not that natural progression of, I feel like young writers would start at a paper like The Dig or one of the smaller local papers, and they'd be able to climb up this ladder and maybe eventually work for something national if that was their aim or not. It was perfectly viable to stay in Boston and write too. I mean, I think, but it's a struggle. It's hard.
So you actually bring up something I've been wanting to talk about, which is, I'll set this up a little bit. So I, living in the city, I lived in Quincy, and then I lived in Cambridge and then JP. But I remember just, walking down to the center and opening up the dig box and taking a dig or taking a Phoenix, and realizing and really saying this, like, how lucky I am that I have something in my hand that I could just be like, all right, it's a Monday night. What's going on in the city? What do I want to do? Maybe you all can sort of broach this subject. Is what are your overall thoughts on that transition? And Charla, you bring that up of how, if we're talking about ManRay's earlier years, you have the Weekly Dig, you have you have the Boston Phoenix, and then by 2005, the Dig's still there, but things have changed. Everything that you can look at and research is on your phone. Talk to me a little bit about that transition that you all saw from, sort of weekly journalism or weekly reporting on Boston, Cambridge nightlife to just check your phone. I'm using that as a not a pejorative, but as a what's people
reality.
Yeah. Emily.
Well, yeah, I kind of witnessed the transition from, old school like flyers, you know what I mean? Going into Tower Records and grabbing as many flyers as you could, and then like going back and like looking through them. And having like the great, weekly papers that we had, especially the Phoenix and even the Improper Bostonian used to have like tons of like calendar listings and yeah, so it's a huge change, and I think a huge loss too. Just like Charla was saying, the Phoenix and obviously the Improper. It's just a big void that I don't see being filled anytime soon. It seems like all events are promoted on social media and everything's just yeah, you got to go to your phone. So yeah, it's been a huge change. So.
Derek, thank you, Emily. Derek?
Well, technology, I mean, sort of the ups and downs to it is that as it, presents a lot of opportunities, it takes a lot of things away. And as Emily was saying, back in the day, there were flyers, there were publications like the Phoenix. You went to the Phoenix when you were looking for a place to live, or you were looking for equipment to buy, or you were looking for, musicians to check out, clubs to check out, dates, just everything under the sun. And also, what was going on in the city. And it was a friend. It was something you turned to, find out what was going on. And now it's gone. And you got Facebook, you got Twitter, you got all these different social media options. But I don't know, it's like you were saying earlier too, Sean, how you could just pick something up in your hand, open it up and look at it. Something physically tangible, it's there with you. You have a physical connection to it, and you can control what you're looking at, as opposed to having to bouncing back. I mean, I guess it's the same thing with social media, and that you have the different buttons to pop in and out of. But I don't know, something about actually holding it in your hand. It felt like there was more control.
Yeah. No,
and there was, like I said, a connection, and it's not there anymore. And there's
That's
less what's.
Oh no, please continue. I was just saying that was a great point. That's a great point you're making. That something tactile actually spurs you into action. I feel more than just scanning your phone and finding something. I'm not trying to sound like a lot. I understand like technology has its place, but I mean, for my children, I always say, don't buy your music online. Go to a record store. Go to look at albums. Look at CDs if they're there. Like that's important. Thank you, Derek. Charla, your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like I really felt that transition when I started at the Weekly Dig, and which was the scrappy upstart rival to the Boston Phoenix at the time. And when we had rivalries like that, and friendly mostly, and we always knew that we had to really sing for our supper and make people want to pick us up, and especially because there was the Phoenix, and we had to really grab people's attention. And whereas the Phoenix was, I think, papers like that, you were used to needing papers like the Phoenix to figure out what was going on, because otherwise you are trolling around for flyers and you are the person who's dedicated to going out and searching for stuff. But here's a publication that will tell you all of the stuff all at once. It's a directory, look at it, and you'll know everything you need to. Which had a real need at a time. Whereas, when I was transitioning from the Dig to the Phoenix in 2008, it was, people were starting to realize like, oh no, this internet thing, like people are finding their own listings, and they're cutting out the middleman. And colleagues that I worked with who had been there for decades are like, they were having trouble switching to that mindset of, people don't need us, how do we get them to want us? and it's humbling, and it's difficult, and there's something very sad about it, because it is magical to have, I have a very visceral memory of a newspaper guiding me to my first nightlife experience in Boston, and I will never forget it. And, it's special. So yeah, I have a lot of feels about that.
Excellent. So I just want to remind our audience, if you have a question for one of our panelists, please pose your question in the chat room, and we'll be getting to them later on in the panel session. So this next question is really, I'm going to try and verbalize it to the best of my ability, but I'm sure the three of you are going to understand what I'm trying to get at, which is the three of you are journalists, but also the three of you are nightlife aficionados. I'm curious as to, when you step into a club like ManRay, are you able to shut off your journalism mind and just dance and have a good time? Or are you constantly looking around saying to yourself, what am I noticing? What's newsworthy? What's something I can report on? What's something I can shoot photography wise? If that makes any sense. So Emily, if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, well, for me, I feel like I always think like a journalist. Like, I mean, it has to be something like, pretty wild to happen at ManRay. I knew that they didn't really particularly want or need press, but I mean, for a lot of people that I met there, I would like give my business card out, I mean, I can never stop thinking like a journalist, but I could also dance and have like a hell of a time too. You know what I mean? And then, it was always interesting too, because like the more I got kind of like entrenched in ManRay's nightlife and I was writing about it for the Globe, I would just like make clear to my editors, like, look, I go there, you know what I mean? And like, just let them know. So, there was no like, I don't know, conflict of interest or whatever. But yeah, and they never had a problem, they knew I went there, and I think they saw it as a good thing because I could write about it with like firsthand knowledge of the place and not just, reading from past articles or like rumors or whatever. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Derek.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me at ManRay, photographing was kind of like, it's me being a part of the party, I guess. People, who wanted to be photographed, and mind you, it was always very conscious of those who did not want to be photographed. I was very careful about that too, especially at ManRay. It was a lot more important for me, at least, because again, I really respected everyone there even more so than anywhere else, and I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to put anyone in a bad place. As far as documenting the shenanigans, the nightlife that was going on in there. And anyway, people who I was photographing really wanted to be photographed, and it was kind of adding to the energy and excitement of the night. So, as I said, it was my contribution to the party, I guess.
Excellent. Charla.
Situations like those, I mean, I always thought it was fun to feel like you're on a mission, and that you're, I'm not just going out for the night. I need to find information about it. Although, I mean, that said, I'm a very shy journalist, and I'm not the most gregarious interviewer. So, I've always been even in my journalism, I've been a bit of a wallflower. I'll do a show review. That's my happy place, is to, stand on the sidelines and observe. And I was much a club goer in the same way, where, I'll go dance, but I never really went. I would socialize at ManRay, but the socialization was not the primary, idea for me. I like to watch what was going on. I like to, even now when I go out, I like to inhabit my little booth in the back and just see what's happening, and then dance when I feel like it. But yeah, that's sort of, they really did go hand in hand for me, in my own way. Like I think I am a reporter in a different way than some other people would approach it. But yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so I want to bring a little current events into our conversation. So whether, I don't know if you know or do know or don't know, but we've had an article recently that has made the rounds talking about the renewal and resurgence of a few different clubs, including ManRay. And so what I want to do is I want to pose this question is, what is the strength or the weakness of an article that from any news source that talks about the possible resurgence? Do you feel that something like that is helpful or harmful? I guess what I'm trying to say is I, as someone who's working on creating a book, I had several people reach out to me and ask me like, is this really happening? Is this really happening? And I'm like, I don't know. Like your guess is as good as mine, but what I'd like to know from all of you is, as we are coming out of, a pandemic, and as, we've now been 15 years past ManRay being gone, and TT the Bears, and, Once, and all these other great venues are gone. What is your view of sort of that sort of like, this could happen, this is possible, news stories? Emily, please.
Yeah, as well, the author of like several, ManRay is gonna come back. Like, oh God, like I feel bad. Like I look like years ago, right after it closed, there were, I don't know if, some verified rumors of sorts that it was going to reopen. And, I did my best, like, calling the city, checking with the licensing board, when a license, did get transferred somewhere. And and now looking back, I'm like, I wrote these articles like raising the question, and then clearly ManRay didn't open. And I stopped. Like whenever I heard a rumor that ManRay was going to reopen, I was like, what, I cannot write another, maybe article. So yeah, each time I did write about it, I was going on, valid information at the time, but obviously it never came to fruition. And it would be great if it happened, but
I think it would be one of the greatest, if knock on wood, if this was to happen, I think it would be like dancing in the streets. It would be absolutely amazing. And as I told someone who had asked me, I'm like, I'll be the first person in line. Like I'll be there days beforehand, camping out, Derek, what are your thoughts on this?
Like Emily, I heard all the rumors, and there was a lot of teasing, and there was a lot of just build up and then disappointment. And it gets frustrating. It is, because I know that there are a lot of people that would love to see ManRay return. There are all the ManRay reunions that happened, and I think the owner, he wants to bring it back so bad.
Yeah.
And I think the latest rumor is that it would be the Cantab, I think.
Whoa.
Or what the Cantab used to be, or at least that's what I've heard.
I had heard it's the on Prospect Street, I believe, the old Improv.
Oh, that's right. The improv. My bad. That's why I'm a photographer. But that would be great. I would love to see that. In Central Square, it's where ManRay really belongs, so it would make sense. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But change is a very weird thing. And you grow up somewhere, you see things come and go, and you want it to come back. I definitely would love to see it come back, and like you, I'd be first in line.
Absolutely. Thank you. Charla, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's really hard. You don't want to spread false hope, but I as Emily was saying, like those were, I guess it all comes back to you using your own personal judgment about what is newsworthy, or your organization's judgment. And, you know, I would say that at the time it was newsworthy. There were people were looking for information, and there were people supplying information. You know, how many stories get written about things that ultimately don't go as forecasted at the time? You know, I mean, it's the nature of the beast. But yeah, it's difficult. You know, rumor can be hard, and yet there is an appetite for stories like these. So yeah, it's a hard call to make.
So I'm gonna put my co-authors here on happy blast here. So Sam, Ted, and I are historians. So we get to sort of sit back, like you journalists get to report on everything now. We just get to sit back and watch it all happen and then talk about it. So I feel like I don't know who has the better line on things. I feel like maybe you all do rather than us. Like we just sit back on our recliners and like, how's this gonna play out? I don't know. Well, we'll have to see. Thank you. So I have a few more questions. I'm gonna ask a few sort of individual questions, and then we will open this up to our group here. So I want to ask a question to Derek. Derek, I'd like for you to talk, and you and I talked a little bit about this for the book, but I'd like you to talk to me about the technology of photography as you saw it move in your time of shooting at Man Ray, in regards to what tools were you using then and what tools were you using at the end that either made things easier or harder, or, you know, just talk to me a little bit about your movement in photography as through the pardon the pun, lens of technology.
Well, I mean, in the beginning it was film, and you know, film had a lot of limitations. One, you didn't get to see what you got at that particular moment. You know, there was some, you know, you could sort of predict, but there were a lot of variables that would get thrown into play. You know, the film could fail on you, or you didn't have the exposure set, or flash could overwhelm the image, a lot of different things. And also too, it was very finite. You had at most 36, maybe 39 images on a roll of film. And then of course you have to pop off film, pop in a new one. And each roll of film you shot cost not money to obtain, but also to process and print. And, you know, that was in the beginning, and towards the end, I had digital SLR, and I was able to, you know, not only see the images as I'm shooting them, but show them off to the people that I photographed. And again, it increased the interaction, increased the party, if you will. It made people happier to see themselves. Oh wow, look, I look so hot, or oh my god, I look like crap. Oh no, get another picture. You know, and I really like having the you know, the digital technology on my side there. It again allowed for more images, and it allowed again for more interaction.
Excellent, thank you. Charla, I was wondering if you could tell me about you know, you've had a neat little move around the chessboard from, you know, the Dig to the Phoenix, and so if you could tell me a little bit about sort of how you sort of I guess sort of interacted with the Nightlife with these two very different weeklies.
Well, I think, you know, the dig represented a time in my life where I was just learning. I was just starting out in journalism. So, you know, I look back at some of my clips from those days, and it's like, wow, I'm really just learning how to do this stuff. And it's, you know, I did less ambitious things then. And, you know, I did these sort of, you know, hidden in the back show reviews, and I did, lots of calendar listings, which was, more of I am very removed from the picture as opposed, well, I mean, one always is, but, I am kind of observing from a distance. Whereas at the Phoenix, I started to do more, more ambitious interview stuff and stuff that was more complicated. And so that for me was the big difference. The sort of the texture of when I started at the Phoenix, it felt really weird to me because it was, the dig felt so young, and I was there from the very beginning of it. And the Phoenix, I walked down the hallway and there was a box of supplements from the 70s about, computers and, about like, guys, have you heard about computers? And I was looking at it, it was covered in dust. And I'm like, what have I done? Where am I? Like, what is this? In fact, it was, so, lively and full of cool people and with a great mission. And, it just felt like a naturally second home, and it didn't feel, it had more longevity and sometimes more baggage that came with that. But it was, it was, it was a very different chapter of my life, but it felt like a natural continuity.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. Emily, so the two books you've produced just are teeming with history, and I'd like to ask you, just because I've read them and I've gone through sort of this idea that, all right, Emily Sweeney is a journalist, but she's also a historian, and I'd like to ask you where you see. And this is a question people have asked me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe down the road, but I'd like to ask you, where do you see the future of creating histories about Boston and Cambridge nightlife? Is there a place for it? Is there a room for it? And in your own personal opinion, would you start with a large, huge tome, or would you break it up into sections of punk or pop, or just how would you, if someone said, I'm going to give you the keys to this castle, how do you see it sort of properly being done?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started writing a book about the history of Boston nightlife. Like, I tried to I amassed so much information. And then I started getting other book projects, other book deals and stuff. And so it's a very good question. I feel like there's like so much material and stuff out there that it could be like, maybe, broken up into different themes, like you said, like maybe you could do like punk, ska, the Rat could have its own book, you know what I mean? And yeah, and then the early history of Boston nightlife is pretty wild too, in the 1920s, all the speakeasies, some of the nightclubs that were operating. I think it would be a great book though, or maybe a series of books. So, but yeah, I'm a huge history buff. So
yeah, I also see, I think there was a most recent documentary about BCN, which I was like, oh, that's really great. And, maybe that's the way to go. Like maybe podcasts, or, there was one on the channel that just came out that was amazing.
Oh yeah, that was great.
That was an amazing, look at, and it was done with voices from people that were there at the time, and kind of like a little bit of what I'm trying to do with Read About Your Children, which is, having the people that were there and danced there and talked there and worked there. But yeah, it's a big question I get is, you should write a book about Boston nightlife. I'm like, just, you said it personally, like the amount of information is so gargantuan that I wouldn't even, I feel like I drown in it. It's so big. I have a few more questions, but I'm going to ask all three of this next question, and you're more than welcome to edit for content or for brevity if you want, or whatever you want. But what I'd like to ask you is this: tell me about the most interesting thing you've ever seen at Man Ray in your time there. What's something that stands out that when you walked out the door, you're like, wow.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. I feel like there was just so many great performances, you know.
Yeah, it could be a show, it could be a performance, whatever you want to throw at.
All right, I'm gonna take a pass because I'm just like
No problem. No worries. If you think of something, just
Okay.
say Derek.
I think of two things. Well, three things. First of which, there was a band called the Gentle Torturers. They played there at ManRay. And basically there were a lot of S&M shenanigans on stage, along with this sort of heavy industrial music. I remember the lead singer, Jen, peeing on stage. Just the first time I'd ever seen a woman pee before, which was like, aha, so that's how it goes. Sorry.
No, hey, we're all adults here. It's no problem.
Another band that played there was a band called Pigface, and they were a composite of various industrial bands. They got together and went on tour, and it was one of the first bands back when I was actually a DJ I got an interview. And I remembered, forget the person's name I was talking to, but I was trying to get him to do an ID bit for the radio station. And he just simply just wigged out on me. I'm just going to quote him. Oh, for fuck's sakes, man. What? Oh, your radio station. That's right. Oh, I'm sorry. We're all on amphetamines, man. I haven't slept in weeks. I'm like,
Oh my God.
But the third, which I really found very endearing, and this to me says a lot about the club, was a guy who's there who was dressed in a G-string, high heels, nylons, and that was it. And just having a blast, dancing to himself and having a good time. And I was just really reveled in his absolute freedom of being him. This is what he wanted. This is who he is. And that was the type of place ManRay was. You could be whatever it was you wanted to be, as long as you weren't, of course, being an asshole. Showing up, being a meathead, and doing stupid shit on people. As long as you were being who you are and you weren't doing anything intrusive upon anyone else, it was all good. And that was something I love and miss about ManRay.
Thank you. Charla, go ahead. Wow us with some stories.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's not unlike Emily. It's such a testament to ManRay that at any given night you could see so much, flamboyant weirdness that it's hard to isolate any single one person out of all of that, and which is wonderful. I gotta say, one of the most vivid things that I remember about ManRay that always stuck with me in a very specific way was the media that they would show on the TV screen behind the bar, where somebody would assemble, just random ass, really strange clips. And I remember that was, as a 19-year-old, that was my first experience with seeing the famous scene from The Wicker Man, and without any context, over the bar, and just being completely entranced. And I have a question for you, is that I would love to know if anyone has found, where those tapes went. Like, does anyone have them? Because it would be amazing to digitize them.
I tell you what, I'm going to text. It's his birthday today, and by the way, it's big happy birthday to Chris Ewan. It's Chris's birthday today. I'm going to ask him that question, Charla. I'm going to ask him and see. We'll see what. In fact, I can pose a question to several people, and we'll see if we can get you an answer for sure.
Oh.
That's awesome. So I want to ask one last question for the three panelists, and then we're going to open this up for a Q&A. And I guess it's this general question, but important question of, is there room for a resurgence of nightlife in the Boston, Cambridge area? And in your estimation, how important it is it to have that? Emily.
Can I go first? I think it's definitely possible. And, you know, especially with given the pandemic, everybody's been like shut in and stuff. Like I keep on like fantasizing about like, okay, people are gonna go crazy now. It's like prohibition ended. It's gonna be the roaring 20s. People are gonna go nuts. Like, and bring back some of the big like nightclubs, because it was really sad to see so many of them close. And even, you know, leading up to, you know, this is even before you know, COVID. So that's what I'm hoping, because I mean, I feel like there's been a huge loss of just like, you know, communal, everybody dance in a big area, you know what I mean? Like, and, you know, meet random people, not just like folks you're matched up with on your phone. So yeah, I think the potential's there, and, you know, hopefully it'll happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Derek?
No, nightlife is very important. I mean, like Emily's saying, everyone's been cooped up so long that they just want to get out. There was a Saturday Night Live skit, very brilliant. It was like a little music video about how this woman has been shacked up for so long. She's gone nuts, and she's like imagining herself at a bar and hooking up with someone, but nope, it's just her and her cat. And that was it. You're gone crazy, and it's people do, you know, people are going to definitely want to get out there and release and have a blast. And nightlife would be very instrumental for that. You know, as long as there's a venue, it's accessible, it's affordable, and it brings the people together. I think those would be the key ingredients.
Excellent. Thank you. And Charla, your final word on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out. I think there's going to be two, you know, dual forces of everyone being a little weird around other people for a while, and even you know, as we're coming out of our houses finally, and also people just being like, yes, I remember nightlife. Wow, I missed it so much. Why didn't I, you know, go out and see more live music during that time? You know, you miss that stuff so much. So I could see there being a big demand and resurgence. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Boston of the immediate future can accommodate. It's been, you know, it's been very depressing to see, you know, the how Harvard Square is turning into a giant bank, you know, and that's all the interesting little niche clubs and shops have been just continuously pushed out, and I hope there can be some pushback on that, because yeah, it is very vital. I mean, we are full, you know, we have such an influx of student talent every year, and these are, you know, we have such an interesting texture of people in our city. It would be, it would be a huge loss if we could not, you know, reclaim some of that. So I hope so.
Excellent. Thank you all. I am going to turn this over to my co-host, Sam Levite. We have a special treat for you all. We have some photographs from Derek that we're going to showcase.
And asking a question, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask. You can put something in the chat if it makes you more comfortable, for any one of our panelists, for all of them, for Sean or any of us. Please feel free to ask questions.
Yes, please. Anchors away.
Last time you had an interview, I shared my VR project.
Oh yes. If you do you want to share that again, Hideki?
If you don't mind.
I would be very happy to. I just made you a co-host, so be my guest. This is a treat and a half.
Let's see. Do you see it?
Yep. I can see it.
Okay, so let's see.
Oh, 3D
This
model.
this is a map of Boston.
Mhm.
Right. This is the building itself. Like you can see the sign here in Man Ray. And what I've been doing is I've been taking pictures, and there's a program where you could line those pictures up and kind of get them into a specific place. So you could look at those pictures, and then you could create the model from those pictures. See if I could give you a demonstration. But as we go in, there's like the gate that I modeled after one of the pictures I had. This would be the middle room, and Terry's bar over here.
Mm.
That's so amazing.
Oops.
Well,
And then the fence. Let's see, I'm trying to show pictures.
stage.
Okay, so let's see. So for example, this would be a picture of the back room that I found. And then I've kind of like placed things accordingly. Let's see, here's a good one. So this is that picture from Man Ray.
Mm.
And then this is like the building I have from it. So you could see like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and this is like what I have for the downstairs. And then, so I could line it up with pictures that I find.
That's amazing.
Great.
So yeah, this is another example. So there's the lamps over here. I actually went ahead and modeled those. But what I hope to do is model everything. And then with enough pictures, I could line up all the rooms to get everything where I want it to be. And then eventually you could get a VR headset and walk around inside.
Oh my gosh, that's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah, Derek, you and Hideki might want to like sort of collab and confab, and depending on what you have for photographs, that might sort of enrich your work, Hideki, in regards to.
Every single picture helps a lot. And I saw some pictures that I would really like to have.
Yeah.
Oh,
So definitely
yeah.
the two of you share your information in the chat with each other if you want, or I think you can private message each other within the chat. So you're more than welcome to. And it's so funny, Hideki, I see this, and I saw this in the last panel session we had. And my thought is, when you get to a point that you want this, that you vision this like in the word done, like I would love to have like a full on huge gathering of you presenting this to people, like Steve Jobs presenting, like coming out, big screen, everyone's there, and I guarantee your name will be in the happy words of everyone, like we got to walk through Man Ray for one more night. Thanks to you. So
Potentially I could have everyone walk around at the same time.
yeah, exactly. So thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
really amazing. That's awesome.
It's great work.
I'm not sure.
So yeah, if anyone else has questions, please pose them to our panelists or to myself or our co-hosts. Anything that you have in regards to between all of us, there's about a fountain of knowledge in regards to Man Ray, and we're happy to answer any questions. Or I could pose one more question to our panelists and ask, I'd love to know your thoughts on any differences there are between reporting on sort of, I guess we'll say like shows in regards to going to an actual show and reporting on that in difference to reporting on like larger events like ManRay closing or larger sort of events. Where did you find that there was so I'll use the words again, benefits or challenges to reporting on one or the other?
I mean, I always find it difficult, reporting on shows and stuff, because especially if I really like the artist, because it's like, okay, I'm not here as a civilian and it is work. So, that's always a challenge, but, and as far as, a lot of the ManRay articles I wrote were usually like advancing events that were happening there, or, writing about things in retrospect. So anyway.
No, that's it's so funny you said like I'm here, it's trying to like, okay, I have to, you can enjoy it, but at the same time you have to sort of look at it. And I'll speak completely like nerdy academic in a sense. Like I'm going to a conference in Vietnam and I have to sort of put my like historian's mindset on, but I can't help but know I'm going to geek out being with like all these other Vietnam historians, and I'm going to enjoy this moment, but at the same time I have to like I have to be a little bit more focused, I guess. But what about Derek? The challenges of sort of being somewhere and enjoying it and photographing it one way for fun, but then at the same time being there on a job and sort of challenges and benefits in regards that you see to that.
Well, photographing like I used to think photographing a show was all about photographing the band, and it makes for an easier sort of situation in that you have one thing you're focused on, the stage. But I remember there was like the show was photographing, it was Biohazard playing with Korn in Worcester, and the crowd was very rowdy and it was very intense. And I took a number of photos of the crowd doing its thing. And I was studying photography at college back then, showed my images, and there was definitely a lot more interest in the crowd images than in the band pictures, which were good pictures, but there is a lot of energy being captured out there in the overall. And I think that is something that I discovered was very important about documenting nightlife, is that you got to cover the overall. You got to kind of be there to encapsulate as much of the energy and goings on as you can. And, for me, it is being a part of the night. That is what I'm trying to articulate with the images, to present to the person, putting them there inside that room, inside that energy, that activity. That's why I always loved wide angle lenses. It really brought as much peripheral vision in, for the viewer as possible, to put them there and have them be a part of it. That's how I've always approached it.
Excellent, thank you. Charla, what about your thoughts on sort of reporting on the bigger and the smaller? And
well, I think in both, I mean, when you're doing something that's live, it's a challenge to get down all the information because you only have one shot at it, and you have to try, is a guy saying something on stage? I need to make sure that I captured accurately, and hopefully maybe I can record it. I don't know. Like you're trying to frantically, like I have old notebooks from being at shows, and they're like a giant mess, barely write it. You're writing in the dark. Like maybe your pen runs out while you're writing in the dark, and it's like, you want to make sure that you captured it appropriately, because it can be hard to, if you're missing a really vital piece of information, it can be hard to reconstruct what happened later at a show. Sometimes you can. I mean, sometimes you can, other people are nice enough to put their own show videos up or whatever, but you really want to be on point with your notes. And in some ways it can take you out of the experience of just experiencing the thing. However, what I have found is that, memory is so valuable, and you go to enough shows, you go to enough nights. I found that just my own clips, sometimes it's nice. I don't reread them very often, but in the case of like when I do, like when I was preparing for this panel, it was nice to suddenly be transported back to that night. And I was reading about an Ex Mortis event I reported on. I had forgotten about it completely. Like I didn't remember a single thing about it. It was 10 years ago, and suddenly I was like, oh yeah, that crazy thing happened. And suddenly it's like a diary that you otherwise wouldn't bother to keep. And I'm sure a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people already experience this by their own social media, and you can kind of travel back in time that way. But for me, it's putting the care and love into reporting on a show like that really keeps it alive in your memory somehow.
I'm gonna geek out, and I'm sure we all can remember the wonderful TV show Quantum Leap. I feel it's like more like that. Like you reread something or you access something. I know I went through it in the interviews for the book, and it was like Sam Beckett all of a sudden remembering like oh my gosh, I remember that very moment. Like it's countless times over the last year this has happened, and I think that's what's great about memory is that and is that we are able to access that, whether it's through a song or a smell or something that we read or something we hold. That's important. I'm actually looking forward to getting back out into Boston and Cambridge and sort of getting reacclimated to the area, and just in hopes of standing in line for Heroes or Ex Mortis, when they open their doors again, and saying to myself like, all right, I'm back. I think we have a question in the chat. Sam, do you want to throw that out?
We did get a question. Marianne was wondering, what year did Campus and Man Ray merge? When did they become one flood, if anybody is remembering the year of that?
I can offer a little background on that, Marianne. So Campus started in 1983 and continued on even into 1985. Man Ray became its own section of that building in 85, but you still had Campus on one end and Man Ray on the other. By the end of 85, they merge into Man Ray, and Campus becomes known as the Thursday night dance night at Man Ray. So Campus has become in the previous panel session we had Bruce Jope, who was one of the managers of Campus and the artistic sort of mindset behind Man Ray. And I would love, I feel like there's like, again, this bleeds into the idea of more Boston nightlife going from the 80s into the 70s. And I feel like there's a lot to mine there in regards to stories and history for sure. Any other questions or memories that anyone wants to share? This is an actual great time for if anyone wants to sort of put a memory out there of their time at Man Ray, please be my guest.
One time I was meeting a friend of mine there at Man Ray. I was going to go in. She comes out to meet me, but she literally fell right down the front stairs. It was like a couple of stairs, but it was enough of a drop to twist her ankle, and I had to go to the hospital with her.
Oh, that is tough.
Yeah.
I
look back and chuckle now, but it was like, oh my God, no.
I have to admit, I was always terrified. So if there was no barrier, the stairs right at the front door that go downstairs, my biggest fear was like, I was going to misstep, and the next thing I know, like ass over tea kettle down the stairs. Looks like like someone threw me down the stairs or something. But
But there were some very high shoes at ManRay. There were some, I mean, I was always very amazed at people's ability to balance in those things.
Look, we all deserve medals for the fact that we, in the dark, in a haze of smoke, and probably with a little alcohol inside of us, managed to not like fall into other people, fall into dance floors, fall off the stage, you know, clang ourselves into the cage. I mean, we all deserve medals, I think, honestly.
It's
I think so.
practice. The platforms like are deceptive. You can have the 7-inch spike and a 2-inch platform, and it's not so bad.
Yeah. Bravo. Thank you, Krista. Bravo to any of you who ever wore shoes that like elevated you off the ground, because I just don't know how you did. Like it's like the laws of physics somehow don't apply. Like it's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's great. So Evan, so yes, I will post when we post this on actually I'll have Sam send you our email, and I can send us your email, and I will send you a link to the previous panel. There's been one other panel that we've had, and we're going to be having more, and we'll send that to you.
Yeah, I meant to do that earlier. I'll add our email and our Facebook page into the chat for everybody, for anybody who is interested, if you are not already part of it.
So I'll make one more call for memories or questions for anyone. If not, we can sort of bring the ship in for a landing. The first thing I want to do is I want to thank Hideki for showing us the digital rendering. I think that's amazing, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. I want to thank my co-editors and co-hosts, and honestly, the brains behind all of this, because I don't think I could do this without them. I truly feel that. That's Sam Levite and Ted Rassicott and Mina Corpus. Thank you, all three of you. You helped make this project and these panel sessions that much better. Thank you. And I want to thank our amazing panelists, Emily Sweeney, Derek Kuyumijian, and Charla Clark, for your insight, for your memories, and for all the great work you've done. It has been an absolute pleasure having you here, and I want to offer a round of applause and a big thank you to all three of you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thanks so much for having us.
I want to let each of you sort of have a few final words. So Emily, please, your final words, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, just thank you so much for having us on, and I'm really excited. I can't wait to see the book when it comes out, and yeah, it's great to see this happening. So thanks for having me.
Derek?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for bringing us all together, for making this happen. ManRay is a very important and worthy chapter of Boston, Cambridge nightlife history to be documented and encapsulated there. And one thing I would just want to say to everyone out there in the world: don't take a single bloody thing for granted. Take it in as much as possible. Remember it, document it, savor it. It's here today, but may not be so tomorrow.
Amen. Thank you. And Charla, you get the final word.
Jeez, I can't top Derek.
Oh, sorry.
That's the perfect sentiment to go out on. But yeah, this has been really wonderful. It's wonderful to reconnect with people this way too. And I can't wait to see this book. I think it is, I am so looking forward to experiencing it. So yeah, thank you for putting this together, and thank you for making this book.
Thank you so much all for coming for us. Sean, do we have an idea what our next panel is going to be on? I think he froze on us.
Uh-oh.
We went all this way without one.
So close.
I dropped out though.
That's so, but you know what? That's good that it happened now and not in the middle of it. So go on, Charla, please finish your thought.
I just wanted to thank you, and I can't wait to see the book. So
Excellent.
And
Well, thank you,
Sean,
everyone. Yes.
did we have an idea what our next panel is going to be topic-wise?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying this. So please pass this along to everyone. We will have a date for our next panel soon. We're going to continue on in the sort of chronological history of Man Ray, looking at the years of 1987 through 90 into 91. It's going to be a look at sort of the 1980s and how nightclubs and nightlife, especially Man Ray, sort of navigated those like later Reagan years of going out and having fun. But really, Man Ray becoming sort of its next iteration, you know, moving on from its first initial years to finding its footing. We're going to be having that panel very soon, so please stay tuned, and we'll have more information on that as we move forward. We'll also be having panels featuring the bartenders of Man Ray's past, the DJs of both Man Ray and Boston Cambridge Nightlife. And please keep in touch and in tune. We're going to be having these all throughout the rest of the year. So we look forward to seeing you all at the future ones.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And I'll just ask my panelists and my editors to stick around for a few minutes.